I used to think I had everything lined up just right. In my early 30s, working as a financial analyst in Boston, I had finally reached a place in life where I could breathe. I wasn't wealthy, but I was careful. I saved, I planned, and after years of discipline, I bought a small condo just outside the city. 2 bedrooms, modest, but mine. As a man who had built everything on his own, that condo represented more than walls and a roof. To me, it was proof that my sacrifices had been worth it. The skipped vacations, the late nights at the office, the years of saying no when everyone else said yes. I didn't want to rent forever, and I didn't want to lean on my family. I wanted to stand as a man who could provide stability for the woman I loved. And then there was her, my fiancée. Brilliant, ambitious, beautiful. A Harvard graduate, now a medical resident at one of Boston's hospitals. I thought we were building a future together, one brick at a time. I believed love, patience, and effort would be enough. But everything changed the day her mother walked into my home. It was my fiancé's idea. "Mom should see the condo," she said one morning as she buttoned her scrubs. "She'll want to know where I'll be living after the wedding." I wasn't thrilled at the thought. Her mother and I had never been close. She struck me as sharp, calculating, the type of person who always measured others against some invisible yardstick. Still, I figured it was harmless. Parents want to know their kids are safe, that they'll be comfortable. So that Saturday, I cleaned every corner of the condo. I wiped down the counters until they shone, polished the floors until I could see my reflection, and rearranged the couch cushions 3 times. I wanted her mom to see that I'd worked hard for this place, that I was serious about giving her daughter a stable life. When her mother arrived, she stepped inside and paused just past the doorway. She didn't smile, didn't offer a compliment. Instead, her eyes flicked from the narrow entryway to the modest kitchen, then to the second-hand bookshelf against the wall. Her gaze lingered on the scuffed coffee table like it was a crime scene. Her heels clicked against the hardwood as she walked through the living room, into the kitchen, down the short hall toward the bedrooms. I followed behind, suddenly feeling like a student waiting for a professor's grade. Finally, she stopped, turned, and said flatly, "This is it." Her daughter, my fiancée, smiled nervously. "It's cozy, Mom. It's ours." But her mother wasn't smiling. She crossed her arms, her lips pursed. "My daughter is a doctor. She spends her days and nights saving lives. And you expect her to live here?" The words landed like a slap. I forced a calm tone. "It may not be large, but it's a good start. It's close to the hospital, safe, and most importantly, it's ours. No heavy debt hanging over us." She raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "A doctor doesn't belong in a starter apartment. She deserves better." I glanced at my fiancée, silently begging for her to speak up. She gave me a small smile, reached for my hand under the table later, but she never directly contradicted her mother. "Mom, it's fine. We'll make it work," she said softly. It wasn't enough. Her mother moved into the living room, where I'd hung a few old family photographs, sepia images of Boston decades ago. My grandfather outside a brick building near Harvard Square, another of him at a hospital gala. To me, they were reminders of my roots, my quiet inheritance of values rather than wealth. She glanced at them once. "Old pictures," she muttered dismissively, then turned her focus back to criticizing the condo. She peppered me with questions, the square footage, the price, the neighborhood demographics. Each answer seemed to lower her opinion of me further. Every sigh, every raised eyebrow chipped away at the effort I'd put into this place. By the time she left, the air in the condo felt heavier than ever, as if her judgment clung to the walls. My fiancée tried to ease the sting. "She just wants the best for me," she said, resting her hand on mine. But lying awake that night, I replayed her mother's words over and over. My daughter is a doctor. She deserves better. And for the first time, I wondered if this wasn't just about the condo. Maybe it was about me. The weeks after her mother's visit were strained. Nothing explosive happened right away, but there was a tension in the air I couldn't ignore. My fiancée still came home after long shifts at the hospital, still curled up beside me on the couch. But it was different. There was a weight behind her smiles, as though her mother's words had settled in the room and refused to leave. Wedding planning made it worse. Early on, we had agreed we wanted something small, family and close friends, maybe a garden ceremony outside the city. Simple, intimate, affordable. But her mother had a different vision. One evening, my fiancée answered her phone on speaker while we ate dinner. Her mother's voice boomed so loudly I could hear every word. "A hotel ballroom, at least 200 guests. People will expect nothing less. You're a doctor now, and your wedding should reflect that." I set my fork down, waiting for my fiancée to remind her mother of our plan. But she hesitated, chewing on her lip. "Mom, that sounds nice, but we were thinking—" "You were thinking too small," her mother snapped. "This is your once-in-a-lifetime event. You can't embarrass yourself or us." After the call ended, I turned to her. "We talked about this. We don't need some giant production. We can't even afford that without drowning in debt." She looked drained, dark circles under her eyes betraying another 14-hour shift. "I know," she sighed. I don't have the energy to fight with her right now. Can we drop it for tonight?" I wanted to be supportive. I knew how hard her residency was, how little energy she had left for family drama. But every time we avoided the fight, her mother's version of our wedding crept closer to reality. And it wasn't just the wedding. Her mother started sending her real estate listings, million-dollar homes in Brookline, Cambridge, Beacon Hill. "This is the kind of house you should be looking at," the messages read. She'd highlight marble kitchens, sprawling yards, 5 bedrooms. One night my fiancée scrolled through Zillow at the kitchen counter, showing me another home her mom had sent. "It's only $1.2 million, she murmured, half joking, half serious. "Only?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "I can't even put down 10% on that." "You know that." She shrugged, poking at her dinner. "She just wants me to have the best. It doesn't mean I expect you to buy it." But there was a hesitation in her voice that hadn't been there before. A hesitation that told me she was starting to believe her mother's vision of what her life should look like. The shift was subtle at first, then unmistakable. We were having dinner one evening when she put down her fork and looked around the condo. "Mom mentioned something today," she said carefully. "She said it's strange that I'm working these brutal hours, saving lives every day, and then coming home to this." Her eyes lingered on the small living room, the modest kitchen, the second bedroom stacked with boxes. My chest tightened. "This? What's wrong with this? It's a home, it's ours." She sighed. "It's just small." And she's right. The neighborhood isn't great. Don't you ever think we should aim higher? The word stung, not because she was wrong. I knew the condo wasn't perfect, but because it was the first time she sounded exactly like her mother. "I bought this place because it's what I could afford," I said quietly. "Because I wanted us to have a foundation without crippling debt. I thought that mattered more than appearances." She looked at me for a long time before asking, "Is this really all you can do?" That question cut deeper than anything her mother had ever said. From then on, the cracks widened quickly. When I suggested a modest honeymoon, maybe a week in Florida or a road trip up the Maine coast, she scoffed. "Everyone I know went to Europe or the Maldives. We can't just go to Florida for a week." When we went furniture shopping, I pointed to a simple dining set. She wrinkled her nose. "That looks cheap. We need something people won't laugh at." And every time, I wondered, was this still the woman I had fallen in love with? Or was she slowly becoming her mother? The worst came one Sunday when her mother dropped by unannounced. She didn't bother with pleasantries, just looked around and said, "I can't believe my daughter is going to live like this. You're an engineer, right? Or what is it you do again?" I clenched my fists under the table. "I'm an analyst. I make a good living. I worked hard for this place." She smiled thinly, her voice dripping with condescension. "Well, maybe in another family that would be enough. But my daughter is a doctor. And my fiancé?" She didn't say a word. That silence was louder than any insult. That night, lying awake, I replayed everything. Her mother's sneer, my fiancé's silence, the way my efforts seemed invisible in their eyes. I had always believed love was about building together, brick by brick. But suddenly, it felt like I was building alone. And for the first time, I admitted to myself, maybe love wasn't going to be enough. It happened on a Thursday evening, rain streaking down the windows of the condo. My fiancée had just come off a 16-hour hospital shift. I thought she'd collapse into bed. Instead, she told me her mother was stopping by. I wanted to protest. "Not tonight, please. She's exhausted. I'm exhausted." But I kept quiet. At that point, arguments with her mother always ended with me looking like the unreasonable one. Her mother arrived with her usual air of authority, stepping inside as though she owned the place. She scanned every corner of the living room like a real estate agent evaluating a foreclosure. Her heels clicked against the floor, sharp and final, like a judge's gavel. Finally, she sat down and delivered her verdict. "This isn't acceptable. My daughter deserves more than this. A better home, a better neighborhood, more space. She can't live like this." I forced a calm voice. "It's what I can afford without debt. It's safe, clean, and ours. That's what matters." Her lips curled. "If you can't provide the lifestyle she deserves, maybe you shouldn't marry her." Those words hit me like a punch, but what truly broke me wasn't her judgment. It was what happened next. I turned to my fiancée, praying she would finally defend me. Tell her mother that love mattered more than square footage or zip codes. That she chose me, not a lifestyle. But she looked at me with weary eyes and said softly, "Maybe she's right." My stomach dropped. "What?" She swallowed, then repeated, firmer this time. "If you really cared, you'd try harder. You'd find a way. Mom only wants the best for me." The world seemed to tilt. For months, I had told myself she was caught between loyalty to her mother and love for me. But in that moment, the truth was clear. There was no contest. All the late nights I stayed up working, all the small sacrifices, the condo I bought brick by brick, it was invisible to her. I stood, hands trembling, but voice steady. "I've tried my best. I've given everything I can. But it's never enough, is it? Not for either of you." Her mother smirked, satisfied. My fiancé just stared at the floor. And that's when it hit me with crystal clarity. I wasn't just marrying her. I was marrying her mother too. I took a deep breath and said the words I never thought I would. "This engagement is over." Her eyes widened, but she didn't stop me. She didn't fight for me. She just sat there, caught between relief and regret as I walked out of the room. That night, I packed a bag and left my own condo, not because I had to, but because I couldn't breathe in a place that had become nothing more than a battlefield. I remember standing outside in the rain, suitcase in hand, looking up at the dark windows. For the first time in years, I felt both utterly broken and strangely free. Weeks passed in silence. I buried myself in work, went to the gym, tried to rebuild some sense of normalcy. The condo was mine again, but it felt different, emptier, quieter. Friends asked what happened, and I told them the simplest version. It didn't work out. But the truth followed me like a shadow. Every word her mother had thrown at me, every silence from the woman I thought I'd marry, it haunted me. Then, one evening, a colleague pulled me aside after work. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice, "I heard something at a hospital fundraiser last weekend. Thought you should know." My chest tightened. "What about?" "Your ex's mom," he said. She was bragging loudly about how her daughter dodged a bullet, how you couldn't provide for her. But then someone corrected her. In front of everyone. I frowned. Corrected her? He smirked. Apparently one of the board members overheard and laughed. Said something like, "Do you even know who that young man's family is? His grandfather's name is on the donor wall at Mass General. His family has supported Harvard for generations. That condo you mocked, that's nothing compared to the houses his family still owns in Beacon Hill." I stood frozen, heat rising in my chest. See, I had never flaunted my family's history. I had grown up in an old Boston family, old money, as people like to say, but I refused to build my life on that. My grandfather had been a benefactor to hospitals, universities, museums. Our name was etched into plaques and marble halls across the city. But I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet. That's why I became an analyst, why I saved, why I bought the condo with my own sweat instead of moving into one of the family homes. And yet, the very circles my ex's mother craved to impress now knew the truth. And instead of elevating her, it humiliated her. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not out of spite, but out of relief. Relief that I had been right to walk away. The fallout was worse for them than it ever was for me. Not long after that fundraiser, the messages started. At first, it was a single text from my ex-fiancée. "Hey, can we talk? Just once?" I stared at it, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I typed, "About what?" then erased it. I typed, "There's nothing left to say," then erased that too. In the end, I put my phone face down on the table and walked away. A week later, another message. "I miss you. I realize now I made a mistake. Please just meet me for coffee." This time, she followed it with a string of late-night calls. When I didn't pick up, she left a voicemail, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't have let Mom get in my head. I should have stood by you. Please, I can't sleep. I can't focus at work. Just give me a chance to explain." I listened once, then deleted it. Not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion. I had begged for her to choose me before. She hadn't. She didn't stop there. Another week passed, then came another message. "I drove by your place tonight. I almost knocked on your door. Please, I still love you." Her words, once so certain, now read like confessions scribbled in desperation. But each one only reminded me of the silence she had chosen when it mattered most. Then her mother tried. The first attempt was a phone call. Her voice was clipped, rehearsed. "I may have been harsh," she began, "but I see now you're the perfect match for my daughter. Families make mistakes. Let's move past it." I almost laughed at the sudden change in tone. This wasn't remorse. It was damage control. She wasn't calling because she respected me. She was calling because she'd realized exactly who I was, and more importantly, who my family was. I answered in the same flat tone she had once used on me. "You didn't value me when it mattered. There's no going back." Then I hung up. Weeks turned into months. The calls dwindled, the messages slowed, until finally the silence returned. This time, it was welcome. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself staring at those old family photographs on the wall, the sepia portraits my ex's mother had dismissed so casually. My grandfather at Harvard, the gala at Mass General. Those pictures no longer felt like quiet background. They were anchors, reminders that I came from something lasting, something she couldn't see. And I realized my family's legacy was never the problem. The problem was that they never saw me. They saw only what they thought I lacked, or later, what they thought I could give them. But love, real love, can't survive in the shadow of someone else's expectations.